Cool. So there is the practical reason for knowing the modes and then immediately learning them as the fifth of that mode, and we'll kind of go over what that means, is positionally for the guitar, okay? So in a really basic sense, just to use chords, right? We sort of have, if we have D, and if we're strictly using bar chords, we've got D here, we've got D here, right? So what this sort of becomes now is we always learn our bar chords in two sort of different positions, right? With the root note on the A string, the root note on the E string. And once we get the modes down, we sort of want to learn the modes that way as well, all right? What that means is each mode, now after we learn them, after we know the positions of all the modes, we then start learning them in two positions each. All right, so it's not just one position, it's two positions, and it's always the fifth of the original position that we're in. Let me explain that before that gets like too crazy. What I mean by that is if I have a D major, which is where we're going to start. We start with the D major scale, and I'm up here. All right. All great. I know where my root notes are, right? I know where my thirds are, to be able to play like the thirds, of the chord. That's great. What we end up losing now is this idea of, well, what if I'm playing D down here? Now, of course, if I'm playing the chord, I can still always jump up here, but that's not always necessary, okay? So now, this is what we have. D major, as we played it before, but can we do the same idea down here? So in a one octave thing, we've got D major, right? Cool. But what we really have now is, that's my one, which means this is my five, my fifth scale degree, right? Which means if I'm in D major, this is my A, it's my five, it's technically Mixolydian, right? A Mixolydian is the same notes as D major, right? But here's where it gets tricky. We already know Mixolydian. That's not a problem for us, right? What we want to do is know Mixolydian, but also how it relates to D major. So what I mean by that is, when we're up here, right? I know where my D's are. I know where all my chord degrees are. My ones, right? My threes, and my fives. So I know how to play it. I know how to navigate that mode. I'm not just doing this up and down thing. That's the same now down here, right? If you play that one octave starting on this D, you'll know. But now, if you play this Mixolydian, the Mixolydian doesn't really become, and I want you to just follow this because this is going to get a little weird with the numbers, but it's not just a Mixolydian where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. That's a Mixolydian. What this now becomes is a Mixolydian, but in D major actually becomes 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why when we start changing the modes around, this happens with pentatonic too, is if I have a simple lick that I'm going to end on, that's going to end on my tonic, right? If I'm up here. Cool. That ends on my tonic. What happens is if we start playing in D major, but in this position, we start treating that as the root note, because that is the root note in a Mixolydian. But we need to think, no, that's my root note now.
But we're playing with the lower fifth, sixth, and seventh.
Yes. Yeah. So now everything switches. So now what you start to be able to do is playing a lick in this position, right, and then immediately finding it in this position as well, right? Whatever the lick is, because you're just doing 3, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. Then you know down here 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. That's the reason for this change. Does that sort of make sense to you? Because we're still in D.
So when you did the
Starting on that, think of it like where your middle finger is for the D major. Yep. Now in my head, this and this register exactly the same way. I don't think of them as anything different over that D major chord. Go ahead.
So is this starting to like train your mind to think less in notes and more in what degree of the scale you're playing?
You're sort of, what happens is, what the main goal of this, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's like an offshoot of this lesson that is really valuable to talk about, is what ends up happening is you sort of are thinking of everything in a few different ways. Scale tones as they relate to the chord, right? And then even note value, right? F sharp, down. If we did that, F sharp to E, D, C sharp, D. I'm also thinking of it as 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. What's funny is down here, if I needed to, I'm still thinking 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. But I can also think, because I'm in this position, I could think 6, 5 in A, knowing full well that 6 in A is my 3 in D or in 4.
Oh, wait. So is this like piggybacking off of the 3 and 6, 3rd and 6th and 4th and 5th?
You can.
Yes. The 5th of D is A and the 4th of A is D.
Yes.
Rule.
Yeah.
I call it the 5th is 4th, the 4th is 5th. Rule.
I like that. Yeah. That it has a lot to do with that, and then there's a lot of similarities between the 3s and the 6s, right? The 3 of D is the 6 of A. That's the same parallel. So now that's what happens. What the main goal and we're gonna go through some of the other modes, but now the main chunk of it is what we just talked about. Now the main goal is this. To be honest, if we have D major, right? And we have the D major sort of here, but even though it's like our A mixolydian, but D major. What we're actually doing is we're focusing on D major and our two main places of doing it. If we start branching out a little bit from here, we're in 5th position. If we just take this 5th position down a little bit, and then we take this 5th position up a little bit, we're already at our 10th position. That now gives us the entire neck. All right, and it's wild to think of, but now I want to show you the one more position with this. Another way to play D would be this, right? And I know we've done that before in a song, right? Where it's sort of like C up to D, and you sort of bridge the bottom.
Oh yeah, that was Tempest Fusion.
Yes, yeah. So now check this out. If we do the same thing here, that's your D. If you put your first finger on the top string, that's your 3. What that means is that's your 3rd in D. What's your 3rd mode?
F Phrygian. F sharp Phrygian.
F sharp Phrygian. You got it. So now
Phrygian is flat 2, right?
Yes. Yep. Phrygian is minor, natural minor with a flat 2. So now you have this. You don't just have Phrygian. you could play Phrygian now still according to a D major, right? So if I do this, I'm playing in D major, but I'm using the position of Phrygian. So now what we've done is we've taken D major, we figured it out as the fifth scale degree, which is A, which would be an A Mixolydian, but still in D major. And then we did the same with the third, which is Phrygian. So now anytime you have major, you can say, oh, you know, if like I'm just going to switch the key really quickly, right? It's like, all right, man, we got something that's in C major. I could jump right into, right? I'm not even thinking, oh man, I'm in Mixolydian, I got to play. It's just that I've done that so much of playing C major, but in G Mixolydian, even though there is no G7 chord, I'm just playing that. Now, this also goes with if I wanted to do the third, if I wanted to just ease my third. So if I were to do, I'm playing in E Phrygian, but I'm playing in C major. I'm just using the position of E Phrygian. Go ahead.
I remember a lot of lessons back you told me about the, you can play whatever mode you want over any chord as long as it's in that key. But if the chord is C major, you're not gonna play a C major, a F Lydian focusing on the F.
Yes, that's it.
A and C.
You'd play an F Lydian, but just the position of it, but focusing still on the C, the E, and the G. Right? Now, what happens here is, this is when it really opens up. I'm going to move it back up to D for a second. If I say, all right, I got Phrygian here, but I'm focused on my Ds. I know where my Ds are, but based on this chord itself. That's, you know, that's my third. So just based on this chord, I know where my Ds are in Phrygian. And then I jump up to the next position, sort of thinking in Mixolydian.
And then you're already back, and then you can just land right back on the D.
Yep. Now we also have this position. Check it out. Give me a D bar chord, and then do that Hendrix thing. So now we're sort of in a D, but we're using this G form almost. And like, have you ever, I know we didn't do it, but have you ever done that Hendrix thing where you sort of play like the bar chord and then you just move your first finger up to where your third is and you sort of substitute it like that? It's like a very Hendrix thing to do. You take the root note away. So you have like on a D, 5, 7, 7, 7. Now you sort of have this doing the 7, 7, 7. And this up to a 9. So now you got 9, 7, 7, 7. And you can even put the 10 there for the root note. All that is a G moved up to D. Right? If you just think of it like a G moved up to D.
Yeah, a G shape.
Yeah.
But it's a D chord.
Yes. Now, what this is natural minor. Right? Now we're in natural minor. But you know where your D is in natural minor. Now I'm using the sixth mode. I'm using my natural minor position. But I'm focused on my Ds still, my F sharps.
Oh, so this is how people can solo in whatever key.
All of it
without practicing 150 hours in each key.
You could think of it that way. Yep. All you're really doing is, can you pick a mode and find it's the root note, the tonic, not the root note. I'm sorry, the tonic. What I mean by that is, in a major scale, the tonic is the 1. In Dorian, the tonic is the flat 7, because Dorian's a second mode,
Yeah.
Tonic is the one, right? Can you, in any mode, can you always find the tonic, right? That's really important. That's when we get this. D major, right? Or now kind of in Mixolydian a little bit. Now I'm straight up in D major. I can move this up to E.
I'm not crazy for thinking that this takes a fair bit of practice to get right every time, right?
Yes, it does. But you want to know when the practice actually happens? Not in what I did. It happens in, all right, I'm going to play D major in F sharp Phrygian, right? Now, luckily, playing D major also in G Lydian is exactly the same thing, right? Because it's all G Lydian is the same thing as F sharp Phrygian. You're starting on F sharp, so you know. So if you know where those chord tones are here, you're gonna know where they are in G Lydian. So that takes care of this, right? Cool. Practice that a ton. Visualize where those D's are. Now do the same thing. Hammer out a bunch of hours in A Mixolydian, but in D. Do the same thing with your natural minor. Your natural minor is going to happen a lot. The reason that natural minor happens a lot as a substitute for the major, D major, but starting down here, right, is because that's the major pentatonic position. So that scale will translate pretty easily. Now,
wait, so is that like, so wait, so where the minor is the major?
So think about this. D major, if I wanted to do the major pentatonic, so that's why the major pentatonic is just the natural minor minus a couple degrees. Right? So then you practice that. Then you practice, you don't need to practice your majors. You got it. Then you practice your Dorian. Right? If you can do that, that's an amazing start. What now happens is this. We've got to do that with every mode because not everything's going to be in major. So let's just take a minor really quickly. Let's just move it up to Dorian. So now I have a chord progression that's D minor to E minor. Straight up E Dorian, right? Okay, cool. I've got my Dorian right here. Cool. I know where my D's are. I know where my flat thirds are. You know, but this is where it's going to start getting tricky. What's up?
Did you say D minor to E minor?
Yeah. So it'd be D.
So how could it be D Dorian or E Dorian?
D Dorian.
Oh.
Right, the 2 to the 3?
I thought you said E Dorian.
No, I mean, it always sounds that way. All the D, E, C kind of gets blurred. So now, check this out, though. You do the same thing up here. You got it. All right, cool. Like D Dorian. Now, if I move this down here, same thing, man. That's probably where we're going to end up playing those bar chords. I got to be able to do Dorian here. If I do Dorian here, this is now my natural minor. Right? We think of it that everything moves up, but now you're going to have to do natural minor, knowing where your D, if you wanted to jump up there,
so the fifth of Dorian is minor.
Fifth of Dorian. If you think of it just in a chart, if we're always going by the fives, you got your major, which is 1, your 5, which is Mixolydian because it's 5. If we just go to 2, right, natural minor, which is 6. If we go to 3, Locrian, which is 7, right? And so on. It's a pretty easy find. Now, but this is where it gets tricky though. Is now if we do that, great. Dorian here, I got to get Dorian down here so I can sort of do my natural minor. Still ending, still focused on my Dorian. Cool. Now it starts getting tricky when we start doing what we do with major, right? Where if I have my natural minor here, right, I can go down. Now I'm going down to this Mixolydian, right? But I'm not doing what I did before. I'm not playing this Mixolydian according to C major. I'm playing this Mixolydian now still according to D minor. So now it's, right?
Straight up sounds like an Iron Maiden song. Like, they just released a new single and it straight up sounds.
It sounds like it. You know what's funny? This shouldn't happen, but it does, especially when I'm playing. It shouldn't is. I should be able to do this. D Dorian, right here. In any mode that I choose that's in D Dorian, over D Dorian, I should play the same, but it doesn't. It doesn't always come out that way, right? But do you sort of understand? So now we have G Mixolydian, but focused on my D Dorian. Focused on my D minor. I have F Lydian, still focused on my D minor, right? And now I can take that all the way up the neck. So same idea. I got my D Dorian. Okay, cool. I might want to start down here.
That's how people can travel all the way up the neck.
Yep, and that's why, because you always... Now, remember we sort of talked about attacking these things in a couple different ways, right? There's a couple things that are happening. Not only do I know just the modal positions, but really what I'm also much more focused on is every D minor, right? D minor in this position, right? And if I was going to play all 6 strings, there it is, right? In bottom position. Now, if I move up to the next position, it sort of looks like this, right? That's sort of my D minor 7. I can kind of put the 5 on the bass. That takes care of this position. That I can visualize here. I got my D minor here. Cool. And then I'm jumping up. There's a little bit of a jump, but I can sort of get this D minor 7 here and kind of make it go straight across. Right now, that's going to help me visualize here. Right? Cool. Now, if I'm here, I'm back to my regular old D Dorian. And then if I move up, I know that this is Phrygian. But I'm back to visualizing here. So I'm using the chords. D minor or D minor 7. D minor, D minor, this D minor 7, kind of weird, but we got it. This D minor 7, and then for when I'm back up here, I've got this one again, right? With that sort of in the bass, can't really get it with my thumb, right? So that's more what I'm looking at, right? And almost saying like, okay, cool. If I know that, check it out, right? If I know that this is D. My D minor 7, right? I got my 1. I'll always know where my 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, and flat 7 are. Right? Now, once I'm there, I know that that's my flat 7. Boom, I'm back to my 1. Cool, got it.
Yeah.
Back to my 1. You know?
So is this something I should really try and practice a lot over the week?
Yeah, definitely. Using the visual of like, if you can't play, you can do the modes all you want. If you can't play a chord all the way up, whether it's major or minor, all the way up the neck and back, the modes are not going to help you, right? Does that sort of make sense? You have to visualize where the chords are to land on the right notes. Otherwise, those modes won't help you. And it's a little bit more difficult to decode the modes, right? In saying like, oh, okay, wait, now, if I'm like here, in D major, let's just say, and I'm like 3, I know that's my 3, okay, that's my 1, and then if I kind of move up, all right, that's my 1 and my 3, my 6. It's a little bit more difficult than just knowing like D major here, D major here, D major here, right? D major here, D major here, and boom, we're back again, right? That's a little bit easier for visualizing where some of this stuff is. And then saying, all right, I know where all my Ds, my F sharps, and my As are, my 1s, my 3s, and my 5s. If I know that, right, I definitely know where my 7 is. It's literally right before each D. My 7 is right there. All right, my 6 is one more back or one higher than the 5, whole step higher than the 5. And that's the way it sort of all comes together in a few different angles. So we're not consistently trying to get this one angle that can get us in a roadblock. You know what I mean? We can sort of start learning it in a couple of different ways. Musically, as far as almost staff, even though we don't really read staff music, but almost in that D, F sharp, A, all the way up the neck. Almost in, all right, this is what mode am I in here? Oh, I'm in Mixolydian according to D. I'm in Phrygian according to D. I'm in Dorian according to D. That, and then always knowing where those chords are, and like all the way up. It's just like, that's how the whole neck opens up, And that's why some of these solos, like we always say, E minor is always the go-to, right, for like a guitar jam. If somebody does that, I'm most likely going to either go here or here. I rarely jump right for that position in minor. You know what I mean? I'm almost thinking of it as, all right, that's my E, kind of thinking of it like in this E minor, almost like in a 5th position, right? Or here, right? And just adding those notes as I need. So that opens the whole neck. So let's just say, for